Je voudrais du soleil vert, des dentelles et des théières, des photos de bord de mer, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je voudrais de la lumière, comme en Nouvelle-Angleterre. Je veux changer d'atmosphère, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Ma fleur sous la pluie de novembre, tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, qu'il est loin, là je tombe. Nul ne peut nous entendre. Je voudrais du Fred Astaire, revoir un latte.
You know, he goes, then they'll go and do something helpful, and he drops the subject for a while. But the interesting thing is that John Kelly did what he was asked. He made life really unpleasant for Jared and Ivanka. They were ready to leave, and it was Trump who couldn't pull the trigger. And I think his supporters actually believe that he needs to fire them to save his presidency.
There are so many things in this book, both big and little, that I'd love to cover. I'll start with the big and then go to a few of the little. But you just said they're dangerous.
Yes.
Why do you think they're dangerous?
Well, let's start with the fact that instead of solving Middle East peace, Jared nearly put us into a war in the region. You know, his taking over control of the State Department, basically, taking Rex Tillerson's portfolio out of his hands, particularly in the Middle East, his complete control of the relationship with MBS in Saudi Arabia meant that he kind of got played by MBS. He pushed for Trump to hold this. The first official American visit was not to a country with shared democratic values, but to the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, with its brutal regime. The theme of the summit was all about cooperation. Days later, the Saudis made a mockery of the United States by turning around and blockading with US support that Rex Tillerson firmly believed was Jared. They blockaded Qatar. They wanted Qatar's money. Qatar has an American airbase. That is our security on the line. That was when Rex Tillerson and Jim Mattis, the defense secretary, who had no idea about any of this, thought that Jared went from being a really annoying obstacle and meddler to being downright dangerous.
And you suggest, in regards to this in particular, to Qatar, which is Saudi Arabia and Qatar have been at odds for a long time, and that almost moved to a full-out shooting war. Mm-hmm. You suggest or imply that Jared Kushner had a financial interest in Qatar and may have been acting out of a sense of revenge, that Qatar wouldn't invest with him? Explain.
Yes, so Charles Kushner had just asked the Qataris for $1 billion to save a building that was a financial catastrophe for the Kushner family. The Qataris at that point turned him down, and lo and behold, our foreign policy turns negative towards them. I will have to say that a year later, when the Qataris are offering money, our foreign policy changes. The US no longer supports the blockade.
Now, you in the title of the book, you use the word corruption here, and you write a lot about Jared Kushner here. Is there proof yet? And what I mean proof is there legal action that you have seen or heard from in the people you've talked to against Jared Kushner? Because Lord knows he's been under investigation for the last 2 years. The Mueller investigation seems to have been very broad and dealt exclusively or extensively, I should say, with foreign interests here. Do you think they found any evidence of foreign influence or corruption over Jared Kushner?
Well, I say in the book that Mueller has definitely passed a lot of that stuff off to more appropriate avenues because, there's a lot of Middle Eastern money. And Mueller was, found himself interviewing, for example, the Lebanese businessman George Nader. That's not going to be part of his report, which is all about Russia, right? Though all that business stuff, I think you're going to see sent to New York.
Do you think he's in legal jeopardy, Jared Kushner?
Well, look, we know Congress is already looking into the 666 deal and what happened with Qatar.
It is Thursday, the 21st of March of 2019, and you are in West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. I am your chef de cuisine, Justice Putnam, and our daily special is Metro Shrimp and Grits Thursdays. A little bit of jambalaya, a little bit of spice in your life. Wow. Hey, last I checked, John McCain is still dead, and he still has not thanked Donald Trump for that great funeral that apparently Donald Trump thinks that he approved. Wait until Trump finds out the only thing he approved was a military transport. And we know how he felt about transport for Comey when Comey got fired. Yeah, when he finds out we gave him a plane? Well, no. Boy, it only means one thing, folks. Trump knows that he's this close to going to jail. And being the president of the United States may not be enough to protect him, even though he thinks it does. He thinks it's a get-out-of-jail card. I'll run for president, and if I win, they can't throw me in jail. Only mobsters think like that. And I got to tell you, really stupid mobsters, because a smart mobster would say, running for president might not be a good idea, especially if I win, because there's a lot of mobster stuff maybe I don't want anyone to know. Maybe even other mobsters. Because if you cheat mobsters and they find out about it, and then other people find out that a mobster got cheated, the cheated mobster doesn't like anyone to know he got cheated because it makes them look weak. And then there are the reprisals now, aren't there? That's the state we live in now, folks. Yeah. Her emails. My God. Well, it looks like Jared was the one that convinced Donnie to fire Comey, that everything would go away when James Comey went away. And this guy, Jared, is supposed to bring us peace in the Middle East? No. He means a piece of the action in the Middle East is what Jared is supposed to be doing, and he's been doing pretty good. And that's why at the top there, that was Vicky Ward explaining why Jared and Ivanka, both of them folks, are dangerous. Yeah, reports are coming out that Ivanka is being groomed to be the president. That'll be some trick. I know she looks pretty and everybody believes the pretty person can't do anything bad. But we know better because of all those film noir movies way back in the 50s with the femme fatale. They could have a heart of gold, and they could be quite evil too. Well, some of them. Usually the femme fatale had some redeeming quality, and Ivanka's redeeming qualities are pretty hard to really pinpoint because there's not that much there. There really isn't. Okay, well, what's on the rest of the menu here in the Bistro Cafe of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy? Metro Shrimp and Grits Thursdays, by the way. Well, Tuesday's 5-4 ruling that strips immigrants of due process rights has major repercussions. Wow. Apparently, equal protection and due process for all is not for all. It used to be, because we used to be America. A federal judge smacked down Trump's Wyoming drilling project until he stops denying science. Well, apparently there's some judges who have not been influenced by the Federalist Society. And, picking up where Dana Rohrabacher left off, Thomas Massie has become the most Kremlin-friendly member of the House. Someone had to pick up the slack. After the break, we move to the chef's table where Guatemalan presidential candidate Aldana, known for tackling high-profile corruption as Attorney General, is not scared of a government arrest threat against her. Yeah, she's out of country right now and will be coming back in. And, the current president has been investigated by her for corruption, so of course she's going to be arrested. That's what banana republics do. And ex-Bosnian Serb wartime leader Radovan Karadzic is sentenced to life in prison for genocide. Took a while, but there's still hope in the world. All that and more on West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Bon appetit. Bottom of our homepage at netrootsradio.com. To the rightish of the page, you will notice the chat room link monitored by Kelly Lincoln. And I should remind you, she has a couple of shows on Saturdays. The first being a new iteration of At the Table, the 523 Happy Hour with Kelly Lincoln begins at 3 p.m. on the west coast of the United States. And that would, of course, be, 6 p.m. on the East Coast. A few hours later, 3 to be exact, she teams up with Ricky May for the Late Night Morning Show. And that begins at 9 p.m. on the West Coast, midnight on the East Coast. That's why it's the Late Night Morning Show. So tune in and enjoy. To the leftish of the page from the chat room link at the bottom of our homepage at netrootsradio.com. You will then notice the contribute button, and do please become a recurring Patreon of Netroots Radio. We're in another one of those extended fund drives. I apologize, but we need to save money for some new equipment, as well as just pay the monthly bills, and they've increased as well. So if you could afford a cup of coffee a month, that would really go a long ways to helping us meet our obligations and keep Resistance Radio resisting as the founders originally intended, and they do. So thank you for your generosity in that effort. If you would like to follow Netroots Radio on Twitter, do so at Netroots Radio. Tom takes care of that. I take care of my thing on Twitter at Justice Putnam. Follow me there. I also post the show notes and links diary on Daily Co's about 10 minutes before showtime and get the links to social media right after that. You can follow the show on Twitter at Cookbook West and pick up podcasts by way of Spreaker, Stitcher, iTunes, TuneIn, iHeart, YouTube, etc., etc., etc. All right. This first offering here in the Bistro Cafe at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, Metro Shrimp and Grits Thursdays. Last week I actually did a sort of take on the shrimp and grits. It wasn't true grits. I decided to do barley because I love barley. And I've been reading where barley may become scarce because it's really going to the beer, which is fine. But the scarcity also drives up the price, and barley is a really good grain just to eat. Throw in a stew. Have it in place of rice. It's quite good. All right, Rebecca Intralgo brings us this first offering here in the Bistro Cafe. And she writes out of Think Progress. Immigration and ICE enforcement, we call them ICE. ICE agents can arrest and indefinitely detain undocumented immigrants and green card holders released from custody years ago due to past minor crimes, thanks to a 5-4 ruling by the Supreme Court on Tuesday. The 5 conservative justices in Nielsen v. Priap argued that the mandatory detention provision in the Immigration and Nationality Act warranted such a strict interpretation. The federal law states that federal agents shall, quote, take into custody any alien who is deportable by reason of having committed any offense when the alien is released. Jaywalking, back to your country. Yeah, spitting on the sidewalk, back to your country. Oh, you think you're going to be killed back in your country? Well, you should have thought twice before you dropped that gum wrapper. Justice Samuel Alito concluded that immigrants who had not been immediately detained after they are released from criminal custody still qualify as mandatory detainees, adding that even if immigration agents are late in executing arrests, it is better late than never. Now juxtapose that against Donald Trump's strategy, where he thinks that being in the office of presidency, the statute of limitations will run out on his crimes, and he'll never be touched. But in this case, somebody drops a gum wrapper on the sidewalk, he or she gets arrested for it, and then years later, oh, we didn't deport you when you were released from custody for dropping a gum wrapper? Off you go. Plaintiffs in the case, however, argued that if ICE wants to detain an immigrant without bail, they must detain them at the moment of release, instead of waiting years after they have successfully built a life in the country, and should be eligible for bond release rather than immediate detention. The whole concept about what our country is that we can bond out. There's habeas corpus, present the corpse. Give us the proof. But we have two classes of people, obviously. The very, very, very rich people who get a fraction of a sentence for being treasonous colluders and scafflaws and bank fraudsters, if you're white and rich. And pretty much everybody else, but if you're black, brown, or some shade of that, you'll be lucky to see the sun 1 hour a day. Now, the court's liberal justices worry that the detention in this case grants significant power to the government. Breyer, writing in dissent, said it is a power to detain persons who committed a minor crime many years before, and it is a power to hold these persons, perhaps for many months, without any opportunity to obtain bail. Breyer notes that the conservative interpretation of the law could permit federal agents to detain undocumented immigrants indefinitely without bail for minor drug offenses or even crimes of moral turpitude, such as illegally downloading music or processing stolen bus transfers. Breyer added that the majority's decision will work serious harm to the principles for which American law has long stood. And the GOP and the rest of the right-wing Freedom Caucus turned to each other and said, exactly. We've been trying to destroy this country for at least 4 decades, and we're almost there. Next offering here in the Bistro Cafe of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy comes our way from Share Blue Media, written by the great Oliver Willis. Well, it looks like Trump tried to allow drilling on 300,000 acres of land without addressing climate change, but a judge just stopped him in his tracks. There's something good happening in the world, finally. Trump's denial of climate science backfired after a federal judge cited his administration's ignorance in an order that temporarily will block drilling on 300,000 acres of Wyoming land. The Department of Interior's Bureau of Land Management did not sufficiently consider climate change when it decided to auction federal land in the state to oil and gas interests, Judge Rudolph Contreras of the U.S. District Court wrote in his ruling on Tuesday. Contreras noted the national cumulative nature of climate change and cited the administration's attempts to downplay the science as depriving the public of the context necessary to evaluate oil and gas drilling on federal land before irretrievably committing to that drilling. As a result, he ordered the Bureau to redo its analysis of hundreds of projects in Wyoming. The Washington Post reports that this is the first time the administration has been held to account for the climate impact of its energy agenda, which has been designed by the wealthy fossil fuel donors to Trump's campaign. Well, it's the same strategy they've been using for quite a while, and they finally found their little petty tyrant to implement it. The judge continued, Jeremy Nichols, Climate and Energy Program Director of Wild Earth Guardian, said it calls into question the legality of Trump administration's entire oil and gas program. This forces them to pull their head out of the sand and look at the bigger picture. Boy, good thing I'm not the spokesman for that group. I would have slipped. Now, under President Barack Obama's administration, the climate impact of federal oil, gas, and coal leasing was considered part of the process. But Trump undid that and is now paying the price. Trump is a conspiracy theorist who does not believe in climate change. He has for years insisted that it is a hoax perpetuated by the Chinese government. His administration's policies and appointees reflect his indulgence in such crackpot beliefs. The failed federal case becomes just one of the many court cases that Trump's team has lost since he assumed office, thanks to incompetence and ignorance. And I believe that now brings the number of failed court cases, since we reported it yesterday at 63, is now at 64. Michelle of Think Progress brings us this final offering here in the Bistro Cafe at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Metro Shrimp and Grits Thursdays, a little bit of jambalaya, a little bit of spice in your life. Speaking of spice, for most of the last decade, former Representative Dana Rohrabacher, Repug of California, held the title of the most Kremlin-friendly member of the House of Representatives, but with Rohrabacher's loss in his re-election bid last year, a new contender has laid claim to the crown. Well, Representative Thomas Massie, Repug of Kentucky, first elected to represent that state's 4th district in 2012, may not be as bombastic as Rohrabacher or have as many colorful anecdotes about drunkenly arm wrestling Vlad as the former California congressman, but he's distinguished himself in the House for pushing and voting for Russia-friendly measures time and again. Oh, and Massie did not respond to Think Progress's request for an interview. He was brushing up on his Cyrillic, I believe. Widely considered one of the most prominent libertarian members of Congress, the Kentucky congressman made news last month as one of the few Republicans to vote against Trump's emergency declaration, describing Trump's national emergency plan as overreach. Well, look, the guy's working for Vlad, not Donnie Two Scoops. All right, let's be clear. But despite his recent vote against Trump's pet project, Massie has taken plenty of opportunities to lavish praise on Trump, from backing Trump's abrupt foreign policy decisions, including when Trump unexpectedly announced American troops would be leaving Syria, to claiming that Trump probably saved the GOP from itself when Trump signed the 2017 tax bill. Oh, really? That's helped? Most notably, Massie has taken steps to slow criticism of Russia, as well as deflect questions about the Trump campaign's relationship with Russia along the way. Massie has regurgitated many of the conspiracy theories Trump has pushed to discredit the ongoing Mueller investigation. He has repeated the baseless claim that the FBI secretly spied on Trump's 2016 campaign, playing up the evidence-free notion that the campaign's attempts at Russian collusion were in reality traps laid by the Obama administration. The Black Kenyan socialists did it. Now, I just want to remind everybody, ask any socialist anywhere around the world, was Obama a socialist? And they'll immediately say, are you kidding me? But ask any right-wing Nazi skinhead white supremacist in the world, is Donald Trump a white supremacist? And they immediately go, he's one of us, and we love him. Now, there is no evidence the Obama administration attempted to trick the Trump campaign into colluding with Russian agents, since Trump has been doing business with Russia since even before he married Ivana. And he was put under watch then for it. Since, Ivana's dad was part of the KGB. A little, notation that I think the FBI would probably be curious about. And they were. It's been documented. In an editorial following Massie's statement, the Lexington Herald wrote that Massie's feverish parroting of Trump's unsubstantiated claims was disturbing. It's unclear whether Massie believes Russia interfered in the 2016 election. I would say check his campaign coffers and see how many laundered rubles are there. But I'm a romantic. Even though America's own intelligence community, along with any number of journalists and academics, has thoroughly established those interference efforts, the Cincinnati Enquirer in 2017 had a survey of Cincinnati area politicians, and they asked whether they accepted the intelligence community's assessment that Russia hackers stole Democratic emails in order to aid Trump's election. According to the Enquirer, Massie did not directly answer, but later in the interview claimed the investigation into Russia's hacking was a political effort to delegitimize the incoming administration, a line often peddled by Trump himself. And then there are Massie's recent votes in Congress, which see the congressman consistently siding with Russia's interests. Massie was only one of 4 members of the House in 2017 who voted against a resolution backing American commitment to NATO. Massie claimed that the move to expand NATO in Eastern Europe is unwise and unaffordable. Wow, that's what Vlad said. Massie further pointed to Trump's tepid opposition to NATO as reason enough for his own opposition, despite Trump's rhetoric that the administration has overseen NATO's steady growth, with North Macedonia set to join the alliance in the near future. And then only 1 month later, Massie was one of only 3 reps who voted against a new sanctions package against Russia, as well as against Iran and North Korea. And that was a package that even Rohrabacher supported. At the time, much of Massie's opposition was attributed to his libertarian bent, and he voiced concerns about cost control and limiting federal responsibilities, but his recent voting record has raised more concerns than answers. Last week, the House voted on a bill honoring slain Russian opposition figure Boris Nemtsov, who was assassinated conveniently, by the way, in 2015. The bill, sponsored by Representative Eliot Engel, Democrat of New York, came with a number of provisions, including calling for an investigation of Nemtsov's death and sanctions against those responsible. The bill also condemned Vladimir Putin and the Kremlin for persecuting political opponents, and some of them conveniently dying of mysterious heart attacks, or 5-story falls from condos moving a piano, conveniently. Russian opposition figures like Vladimir Karadzic praised the bill as something that would bring at least a measure of accountability for the organizers of Russia's most high-profile political assassination, and it passed nearly unanimously. Moving on to the Senate. But guess what? Massie was the lone vote against the measure. Now, it looks like he's also had dinner with Maria Butina and other high-profile Russian figures. And if he's had dinner with Maria Butina, I really want to know how many rubles are in his campaign coffers. We need to know. All right, let's get to our break. And you know that when we come back from the break, we're going to go through weather from around the world, and we're going to finish up with the stories that we've curated for you today. You are listening to West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, and we will be right back.
You are listening to netrootsradio.com.
Please hang up and try again.
From a point at sea to the circles of your mind, a new force is at work for planetary transformation. New radio for a new Earth.
This is Scientific American's 60-Second Science. I'm Christopher Intagliata. A pound of chicken will set you back a couple bucks. Ground beef, maybe $3 to $4 a pound. But a pound of protein-rich dried mealworms could cost twice as much.
The price per pound of mealworms is still relatively expensive.
Juan A. Morales Ramos is a research entomologist with the USDA in Stoneville, Mississippi, and he says that cost might be coming down. For 8 years, he and his team have selectively bred mealworms, which are the larvae of a type of darkling beetle. Their goal was to breed larger and larger worms, and they succeeded in nearly doubling the size of the larvae. But doubling up came with an evolutionary trade-off. Larger larvae had fewer eggs, and their offspring weren't as hardy as the ancestral strain. Still, generations are shorter in the worm world, meaning it's faster to experiment, and sequencing the genes of the selected strains might reveal new traits to breed for.
We may be able to produce a super line of mealworms that grow faster and larger and probably produce more eggs, hopefully.
The findings are in the Journal of Insect Science. The eventual goal here is to bring mealworms beyond fishing bait, because if the cost comes down, they'd be an economical protein source for farmed fish and chicken feeds, and one recent study rated them as significantly healthier than beef or chicken for a human diet. Other cultures are leading the way.
There are many cultures, not just in Mexico, but in Asia and Africa, that regularly consume different types of insects. You can go to the market and find them. In Mexico, there are restaurants specialized in serving insects. I'm not talking just regular restaurants. These are like 5-star restaurants doing that.
Of course, here in the U.S., we also eat insects. But in the near future, we might do it on purpose. Thanks for listening. For Scientific American's 60-Second Science, I'm Christopher Intagliata.
This program is presented by the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention.
Hi, it's Tom. Could we humbly suggest your donation to netrootsradio.com? All we've got to run this 24-hour powerhouse of progressive resistance radio is what comes out of our own wallets. And you are our biggest donor. And it doesn't take much, $3, $5. Just go to the bottom of our netrootsradio.com page and hit our secure donate button. Heck, you can even make a recurring contribution. And you'll get a wondiferous pair of Netroots radio stickers for application to your backpack, your bumper sticker, or your banjo. Well, it's up to you which backpack you want to put it on. So donate what you'd like at the bottom of our netrootsradio.com's homepage. because you are our biggest donor. netrootsradio.com. Together, we are Resistance Radio.
We know the answer to the first question, but the second? I'm Bill Newman, and this is the Civil Liberties Minute. And the first question is, how many state attorneys general have sued the Trump administration challenging the president's declaration of a national emergency at the southern border and his claim that he has unbridled authority to divert money from other purposes and programs appropriated by Congress in order to build his wall? The answer is 20 state attorneys general, who point to Article 1 of the Constitution, which establishes the powers of Congress, which says that no money shall be spent from the federal treasury unless Congress has appropriated it. And here, Congress has specifically voted to not authorize money for the wall. But Trump says he can spend money that Congress has appropriated for some other purpose to build his wall, which raises the question before the courts and the country, will America's system of government, built upon the premise of 3 co-equal branches of government, survive this attack by the executive branch against the legislative? After all, it's Congress's power of the purse that makes it co-equal. So now we know what the critically important question is. Will democracy as we know it survive? What we don't know yet is the answer. The Civil Liberties Minute is made possible by the ACLU, because freedom can't protect itself.
I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. On this day in labor history, the year was 1857. Labor activist Alice Henry was born in Melbourne, Australia. Alice originally went to work as a teacher, but then found her true calling as a journalist. She wrote in support of the day's progressive causes, including care for dependent children, labor reform, and women's rights. Her writings and speeches garnered attention well outside of Australia, and in 1905, she was invited to work for the National Women's Trade Union League of America. The WTUL was an important U.S. women's labor organization, supporting several strikes and advocating for women's suffrage. The League tried to bridge the tensions that often existed between middle-class progressive reformers and working-class women. The League also attempted to build ties with the American Federation of Labor, pushing for the AFL to do more for women workers. Unfortunately, these efforts often went ignored. Alice joined the League office in Chicago, where she again put her pen to work for the causes of women's suffrage and the rights of working people. For 8 years, Alice served as the editor of the women's page of the popular labor paper, the Union Labor Advocate. She served as a lecturer and as a field organizer. Alice advocated that when possible, women form their own unions. She believed that the independent locals would allow women a greater voice than in the male-dominated union movement of the day. In a 1915 essay she wrote, "The meetings of women and girls only draw better attendances, give far more opportunity for all the members to take part in the business, and, beyond all question, form the finest training ground for the women leaders who in considerable numbers are needed so badly in the women's side of the trade union movement today."
Labor History in 2 brought to you by the Illinois Labor History Society and The Rick Smith Show. For more information, go to laborhistoryin2.com. Like us on Facebook and follow us on the Twitters at Labor History in 2.
I read the news today, oh boy.
It's time for Nicole Sandler's What's News from NicoleSandler.com and the Progressive Voices Network.
Democratic presidential candidates listen and learn. 6 days after shootings at 2 mosques in Christchurch killed 50 people, New Zealand Prime Minister Jacinda Ardern said that the country will ban military-style semi-automatic weapons.
Today I'm announcing that New Zealand will ban all military-style semi-automatic weapons. We will also ban all assault rifles. We will ban all high-capacity magazines. We will ban all parts with the ability to convert semi-automatic or any other type of firearm into a military-style semi-automatic weapon. We will ban parts that cause a firearm to generate semi-automatic, automatic, or close to automatic gunfire. In short, every semi-automatic weapon used in the terrorist attack on Friday will be banned in this country. These changes will require legislation. That legislation is now being drafted and will be introduced under urgency. A shortened select committee process will apply, so I encourage all those who wish to submit to start now. My expectation is that the law will be in place by the end of the next 2-week sitting session, which is by the 11th of April.
That's how it's done. Donald Trump continued his latest unpresidential meltdown Wednesday when, speaking at a tank factory in Ohio, he again went after the late Senator John McCain, this time complaining that he wasn't thanked for McCain's state funeral.
So John McCain left it. I endorsed him at his request, and I gave him the kind of funeral that he wanted, which as president I had to approve. I don't care about this. I didn't get thank you. That's okay. We sent him on the way, but I wasn't a fan of John McCain. So now what we could say is, now we're all set. I don't think I have to answer that question, but the press keeps, what do you think of McCain? What do you think? Not my kind of guy, but some people like him, and I think that's great.
Sadly, very few Republicans are calling Trump out on these attacks. Some, like Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell, tweeted out McCain accolades without explaining the reason for the disjointed praise. Georgia's Senator Johnny Isakson went on radio and called Trump's attacks deplorable. And Lindsey Graham, McCain's BFF and now a Trump sycophant, said that the attacks hurt Trump more than McCain's legacy.
I love John McCain. I traveled the world with him. I learned a lot from him. He's an American hero, and nothing will ever diminish that. I think the president's comments about Senator McCain hurt him more than they hurt the legacy of Senator McCain. I'm going to try to continue to help the president. My job is to represent the people of South Carolina. They want me to work with the president where I can. I've got to know the president. We have a good working relationship. I like him. I don't like it when he says things about my friend John McCain. And the best thing that can happen, I think, for all of us is to move forward and focus on the challenge.
During his incoherent ramblings to the press as he was leaving the White House on Wednesday, Trump was asked if the Mueller report should be released. He responded by bragging about his 2016 election victory and complaining that Mueller was never elected.
I don't mind. I mean, frankly, I told the House, if you want, let him see it. Again, I say a deputy, because of the fact that the Attorney General didn't have the courage to do it himself, a deputy that's appointed appoints another man to write a report. I just won an election with 63 million votes or so, 63 million. I had 206 to 223 in the Electoral College, 306 to 223. And I'm saying to myself, wait a minute, I just won one of the greatest elections of all time in the history of this country, and even you will admit that. And now I have somebody writing a report that never got a vote? It's called the Mueller report. So explain that, because my voters don't get it.
Those grounded Boeing 737 MAX planes are expected to be on the ground for a while. The FBI on Wednesday joined the criminal investigation into the certification of the planes, lending its resources to an inquiry by the Department of Transportation. Acting Defense Secretary Patrick Shanahan is under internal department investigation for allegedly promoting the commercial interests of Boeing, his former employer, while serving at the Pentagon. Damage and losses in Nebraska, Iowa, and the upper Midwest from winter weather and flooding will exceed $1 billion. Farm bankruptcies were already on the rise, and the agriculture sector has been pounded. In Nebraska alone, livestock losses are estimated at $400 million and crop losses at $440 million. Meat prices are on the rise nationwide. Meanwhile, on the other side of the world, Cyclone Idai has been called one of the worst weather-related disasters in the history of the Southern Hemisphere. In Mozambique, more than 200 people have been confirmed dead, another 98 in Zimbabwe, and 56 in Malawi. Mozambique's president has said the true death toll of Idai could be much higher at around 1,000. And that's just a bit of what's news for now. I'm Nicole Sandler. If you appreciate these reports and the Nicole Sandler Show, I hope you'll consider making a contribution. My work is 100% listener supported, and I can't do it without your help. Find out more at NicoleSandler.com/donate.
From UN headquarters in New York, I'm Luke Vargas with your world in 2 minutes.
British voters eager to leave the European Union as planned on March 29th had their hopes dashed on Wednesday as Prime Minister Theresa May formally asked European leaders to extend that Brexit deadline to June 30th, amid repeated failures by lawmakers to agree on a Brexit deal. Speaking one day ahead of a summit of European leaders to discuss Brexit, European Commission President Donald Tusk said he approved May's delay on one condition.
I believe that a short extension will be possible, but it will be conditional on a positive vote on the withdrawal agreement in the House of Commons.
Obtaining that positive vote has thus far proved elusive. On two occasions, in January and again this month, members of the House of Commons overwhelmingly rejected the Brexit deal Theresa May first began negotiating in early 2017. She'd hoped to present that same deal for a third vote this week, but was blocked from doing so by the Speaker of the House of Commons, who invoked a parliamentary convention dating back to 1604 that the government could not present the same bill for multiple votes without making substantial changes to the text. It's not clear how May hopes to get around that rule when she presents her Brexit deal for a third up or down vote next week, but perhaps she hopes the urgency of the situation and the increasingly likely possibility Britain would crash out of the EU without any arrangements in place will convince wary lawmakers to pinch their noses and back her Brexit text. If they fail to do so, she suggested she preferred a no-deal Brexit to none at all.
Some have suggested holding a second referendum. I don't believe that's what you want, and it is not what I want. We asked you the question already, and you gave us your answer. Now you want us to get on with it, and that is what I am determined to do.
Luke Vargas, The United Nations.
Thank you for accompanying us here to the chef's table at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Metro Shrimp and Grits Thursdays, a little bit of jambalaya, a little bit of spice in your life. We always begin weather from around the world along the banks of the Rogue River, in the Rogue River Valley of Southern Oregon on the west coast of the continental United States of America, the recreation region of the West Coast, by the way. At least that's what it says on the signs. And here at the mothership, it is currently 39 degrees Fahrenheit, a little bit cooler than we were forecast from yesterday, but not too bad. We will be only getting up into the mid to low 60s today, somewhat what it was yesterday. It was more mid to upper 60s. And we will expect an overnight low of about 44 degrees, and that is because tonight also increasing chance of rain and copious amounts starting tomorrow. Should be partly cloudy today. Winds are light and variable out of the south-southwest. Looks like they will stay that way, or will remain from that direction. But it will be picking up to 5 to 10 miles per hour, and then shifting tomorrow morning out of the south-southeast at 5 to 10 miles per hour. And that's when the copious amounts of rain looks like a tad under a quarter inch. But it's still copious amounts. And then off and on through the weekend. Well, rain through the weekend. Off and on next week. Rain and partly cloudy, and it looks like something under a quarter inch each day. So we're going to have a little bit of rains coming through in this new storm window that's opened up. Pollen is still rated at none. The air quality index is rated at good at 33 parts per million. Still a little high for those of you who have breathing problems, so do take care. That daytime UV index has clicked up a few points up to 5 and is in the cautionary moderate range, so do take care of your skin. It's only going to get worse out there. Please, please Barometric pressure is falling at 29.87 inches. Visibility is at 7 miles. And relative humidity is 94%. Yeah, it's going to get wet, indeed. Weather from around the world is brought to you by people's personal weather stations that they purchased. These people planted these purchased personal weather stations somewhere on their property, and these people positively live around the world. That's my P-tape, folks. And I didn't need to get it from Michael Steele because there was no subterfuge involved. London is 58 degrees and cloudy. Paris is 62 and sunny. God, I love Paris in the spring. Rome is 74 and sunny. I love Italy in the spring, too. Kiev is 47 and mostly cloudy. Kabul is 46 and fair, not if you're in a wedding party. You never feel as fair when you're being bombed by drones. So if it's fair, it could be raining drone bombs. So do take care if you're in a wedding party out in the public air. Alrighty. Hong Kong is 74 and mostly cloudy. Tokyo is 65 and partly cloudy. Sydney, Australia is 70 degrees and partly cloudy. San Francisco, California is 47 and partly cloudy. And New York is 44 degrees. Oh, I'm sorry, you're now up to 46 degrees with rain and a weather advisory of a gale watch. Oh, my God. I guess people better keep their windows closed, every single one. And hold on to your top hats. Do button up that top button. Stay warm. Stay dry. And that is weather from around the world. Brought to you by people's personal weather stations that they purchased. These people planted these purchased personal weather stations somewhere on their property. And these people positively live around the world. First amuse-bouche comes our way from Reuters by Nelson Renteria, a Guatemalan presidential candidate known for tackling high-profile corruption as Attorney General, said that she would return from neighboring El Salvador within days despite an arrest warrant. I'm sorry, I was mistaken at the top. I believe I said she was in Honduras, but maybe I said obliquely she was out of country. Well, she was in El Salvador and she's coming back. A judge on Monday ordered the arrest of Thelma Aldana, a former attorney general who helped topple and imprison a former president on corruption charges, and investigated current president Jimmy Morales, who has largely dismantled the country's UN-backed anti-corruption investigative body known as CICIG. The country's electoral tribunal confirmed her candidacy in the June presidential election on Tuesday, shortly after news reports circulated of the order. Aldana said if she wins, she would make government efficient and transparent, as well as strengthening CICIG, adding that the accusations against her were politically motivated to undermine her bid for top office. Now, this is pretty much a Vlad strategy as well, used in the Ukraine, especially against women who have had the temerity to rise to high office, especially on anti-corruption campaigns. It seems to be a theme. It's happened over and over and over, and some of these women have been in prison for quite a few years, conveniently. No, I am not scared. They're the ones who are scared, Aldana told Reuters. When I go back to Guatemala, I'll do it with complete calm. I'll do it without a single problem. The arrest order includes charges of embezzlement, lying, and tax fraud, exactly the charges that were brought against, I can't remember her name, but I believe she was in the Ukraine, one of those former Soviet bloc countries that Vlad decided, you want independence? We'll show you independence. In January, Morales' government said it was terminating CSIG after already banning the group's head from the country. If she wins, Aldana said she would ask the UN to formally expand the anti-corruption mandate of the CSIG, which was originally formed to investigate illegal security forces. Clandestine security bodies embedded in the state motivated the Guatemalan government 10 years ago to go to the UN, but they're still there, she said. Aldana added that she is against a law proposed by Morales' party that would free military officials convicted of human rights crimes during the Central American country's 36-year civil war, which has sparked criticism from international rights groups. Without a doubt, it's a proposal that could generate impunity, and obviously I'm not in favor of approving it, she said. Well, good luck, Ms. Aldana. Watch your back.
Je te donne seul mon amour pour la vie entière. La promesse de me trouver à tes genoux. Aussitôt que tu m'appelles, rester toujours fidèle. C'est tout, c'est tout. Je te donne tous mes printemps, mes étés de mer, mes automnes quand les feuilles tombent partout. Si ce n'est pas une bonne affaire, je te donne tous mes hivers, c'est tout.
Stephanie Van Berg and Toby Sterling of Reuters brings us this final amuse-bouche here at the Chef's Table at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. UN judges on Wednesday sentenced former Bosnian Serb political leader Radovan Karadzic to life in prison on appeal, ending one of the most momentous trials over genocide committed during the Balkan Wars of the 1990s. Appeal judges upheld Karadzic's conviction for the 1995 massacre of 8,000 Muslim men and boys at Srebrenica and ruled that the 40-year sentence imposed at the close of his trial was too light, given the immensity of the crimes in question. The sentence was fitting, given the extraordinary gravity of Karadzic's responsibility and his integral participation in the gravest of crimes committed throughout the entire area of the conflict in Bosnia, Jurnsson, the judge said, reading the panel's decision. Karadzic, 73, was convicted in 2016 for the genocide at Srebrenica, and he was also found guilty of war crimes and crimes against humanity for the 44-month Serb siege of the Bosnian capital, Sarajevo, that terrorized the civilian population, and for overseeing a campaign of ethnic cleansing that drove Croats and Muslims out of the Serb-claimed areas of Bosnia. Now, he is not able to appeal this any further. This ruling is final and cannot be challenged on appeal. Karadzic's lawyer, however, said he would continue to consider ways to look for a judicial review or commutation of sentence. He has a lot of regret about what happened during the war and feels very badly for all the suffering today. He has a moral responsibility, but he feels he does not have an individual criminal responsibility for any of those crimes for which he's been convicted today, his lawyer whined to the reporters. In hiding for over a decade after the war, Karadzic was arrested and handed over to the court in July of 2008. He will remain in custody at the court's detention center in The Hague until judges determine where he will serve out his sentence. Now an appeal verdict is pending in the case of Karadzic's former right-hand man, Bosnian Serb military commander Ratko Mladic, who was convicted of war crimes and genocide in November of 2017 and given life in prison. Well, that brings us to the end of our broadcast period for this day, but we'll be back tomorrow for Blue Moon Spirits Fridays. You know that Netroots Radio is going to be broadcasting on. So I suggest that you stay tuned all day and all night for all the breaking news as it breaks. And we'll meet up here tomorrow, right here in West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy Bon appetit.
Je voudrais du soleil vert, des dentelles et des théières, des photos de bord de mer, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je voudrais de la lumière, comme en Nouvelle-Angleterre. Je veux changer d'atmosphère, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Ma fleur sous la pluie de novembre, tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, il est loin, là je tombe. Nul ne peut nous entendre. Je voudrais du Fred Astaire, revoir un latte Goël. Je voudrais toujours te plaire, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je veux déjeuner par terre, comme au long de golfe clair. T'embrasser les yeux ouverts, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Sous la pluie de novembre, tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, il est loin, là je tombe. Nul ne peut nous entendre. Ba-da-da-dum-di-da-dum. 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 Dans mon jardin d'hiver. Ba-da-da-dum-di-da-dum. 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 Dans mon jardin d'hiver. Dans mon jardin d'hiver. Dans mon jardin d'hiver.